Right, hello guys, welcome back. Today I have a new Prismatic Titan build for you that hinges on a powerful rework to a previously underperforming exotic that allows you to compete with even the strongest Titan builds like the well-known Consecration spam, while also having arguably better crowd control and overall survivability. Getting right into it, today's build is going to revolve around the Titan exotic class item, and in order to get the fullest potential out of the build, we're going to need a very specific combo of perks. The first of which is Spirit of the Horn. Spirit of the Horn, much like its real exotic counterpart, has received a rather significant buff in Episode Heresy, where casting your barricade now unleashes 3 mighty waves of solar light that burn anything in their path and leave sunspots behind from defeated enemies. These waves deal a decent amount of damage, and the sunspots they leave behind are just the cherry on top. They provide even more damage over time to any enemies caught in their wake, but also, standing within the sunspots grants you restoration ×1 for as long as you're in them, then for a remaining 5 seconds after you exit. Having Sol Invictus also increases your grenade and melee regeneration speed by 100%, which is just a very nice bonus to have for simply stepping through your sunspots. The second perk that has the most unbelievably perfect synergy with Spirit of the Horn is Spirit of the Abeyant, because what this is going to do is improve your Drenger's Lash aspect. With Spirit of Abeyant, Drenger's Lash now spawns 3 lashes instead of 1, and the lashes travel further and track enemies more aggressively. And when you put these two perks together, both the solar and strand lashes perfectly overlap and suspend and burn enemies all at the same time. And it's this interaction that's the central core of today's build. With the setup I'm about to explain to you, you're going to be able to spam your juiced up barricade incredibly often, rapidly charge your transcendence meter while doing so, and become an absolute crowd control demon that stomps through any content you're playing, all while healing and gaining large amounts of damage resistance while doing so. Plus, this build also incorporates bolt charge and everything that comes alongside this awesome new arc verb. So let's dive right in. So we ought to start by discussing our subclass configuration, but before we get stuck in, I'd encourage you to join my community Discord server. A big goal of mine this year is to expand my community, and if you're looking for a place where you can check out my full catalogue of builds and hang out with me and the rest of our awesome community we have here, then do consider joining, link in the description. Kicking things off, we have our main super of choice, which is going to be Twilight Arsenal. This super is great for clearing large groups of ads since it has an intrinsic gravity effect when the axes make contact, and funnily enough, it's also one of the better supers for dealing with tormentors. For some reason, the axes just bypass the tormentor's immunities and shred right through its health bar. However, if you prefer a particular super other than Twilight, then feel free to swap it. The super isn't the most integral part of this build, and I just really like Twilight Arsenal, but if you prefer Thunder Crash, then please be my guest. Up next for our class ability, we're taking Rally Barricade so that both our class item perks can properly activate. You could in fact go with Thruster instead, but this has a consequence of completely changing the behavior of the class item perks. With Thruster, Spirit of the Horn now creates 4 lashes in an X pattern, and Spirit of the Abeyant leaves behind a strand ball that detonates into a suspending explosion. And while cool, these interactions are not quite what we're here for today, so we will remain with Rally Barricade. In addition, standing behind your Rally Barricade provides an 80% enemy splash damage reduction, which is super nice for staying alive in more difficult content given how prevalent splash damage is in this game. For the melee ability, we're taking Thunderclap since it's very solid for dealing with grouped ads and puts out a hefty amount of damage. Plus, during the Thunderclap wind-up animation, you also gain an 80% damage resistance to all sources, so if at any point you find yourself taking lots of damage, activating Thunderclap might just save you from certain death. Finally, for the grenade, we're taking the Glacier Grenade since it's fantastic for generating large chunks of dark energy and thus helping build our transcendence meter much faster. Moving on to our aspects now, the first is of course going to be Drenger's Lash since it's what enables us to use Spirit of the Abeyant. And a note about Drenger's Lash is that it does increase the cooldown of our barricade, but fret not, with everything else that comes into the build later, this won't be a very big issue. For our second aspect, we're going to be taking Knockout. Knockout is going to make it so critically wounding an enemy infuses your melee attacks with arc energy that have increased lunge range and damage, and scoring a melee kill while Knockout is active will make you amplified. For powered melees, the knockout damage bonus is 50%, which is just a nice little bonus, but really we mainly want this as our way of becoming amplified, because in Episode Heresy, being amplified now has 2 new benefits that it didn't have before. Firstly, you now gain a flat 15% damage resist to all sources, and second, being amplified causes enemies to become less accurate when targeting you, which really helps to improve the overall survivability of the build. So if you ever have your Thunderclap ready, try to get a kill with it as soon as possible in order to get these benefits rolling, and don't worry, you will have it very often. Getting into our fragment choices now, we first have Facet of Courage. This fragment is going to make it so your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs, which actually has a very nice synergy with our exact class item role. Because the Solar Waves are light damage and the Strand Waves are dark damage that apply the Suspend debuff, the sunspots created are going to deal more damage by default simply because of the strand wave that came before. The actual percentage increase is only 10%, but it's better to have than not. Plus, this also applies to the rest of your light abilities like Twilight Arsenal, and an extra 10% super damage is never not nice to have. Next, we're taking Facet of Balance. This fragment is going to make it so rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy, and rapidly defeating targets with dark damage grants grenade energy. And again, because we have both light and dark damage coming from our barricade and the dark damage from Glacier Grenade, this fragment fits quite nicely. If you want the finer details, scoring 3 rapid kills with either light or dark grants roughly 10% to its respective ability. For our third fragment, we're going to need Facet of Protection, which is going to provide a nice 15% additional damage resistance when surrounded by 3 or more enemies, or 32% when surrounded and transcendent, something which we will be charging and having very quickly and often. Next, we have Facet of Hope. This fragment is going to increase the regeneration speed of our class ability, aka the core piece of the build, by 60% as long as you're holding at least 2 elemental buffs. And with this build, the main ones we are going to be holding pretty consistently are Amplified, Bolt Charge, and Void Overshield. Our final fragment is going to be Facet of Purpose, which is going to make it so collecting an Orb of Power grants either Bolt Charge, Restoration, Frost Armor, Woven Mail, or Void Overshield for 5 seconds based on the damage type of your super. And because we have Twilight Arsenal, a Void super, we're going to be accumulating Void Overshield from collecting said orbs. Alright then, that about does it for our subclass makeup, so now let's move on to our weapon choices. The first of which should be any strand primary of your choice. My recommendation here is the unloved hand cannon from the brand new Sundered Doctrine dungeon if you have it, but any strand primary will do. The reason we need one is because it's going to be a great helper when it comes to building your Dark Transcendence meter incredibly quickly, mainly because there are 2 artifact perks this season that pair very well with strand weapons. The first is Unraveling Orbs, which makes it so collecting an Orb of Power grants unraveling rounds to your strand weapons for 14 seconds, which is a really long amount of time considering how useful the effect is in the first place. The second is Horde Shuttle, which makes it so damaging unraveled targets with weapons periodically spawns threadlings on that target. And with both of these perks together, your Dark meter is able to charge incredibly quickly. Just take a look. Don't get me wrong, the strand waves from your barricade and your Glacier Grenade will also help to charge your Dark meter, but having a strand weapon is just adding that finishing touch to make things more smooth. After that, you're also going to need a Void weapon with the perk Destabilizing Rounds. I've gone for Choir of One with the Destabilizing Rounds Catalyst, but if you're willing to grind for it, the brand new Void Rocket Assisted Frame Sidearm Lotus Eater can get the combo of Repulsor Brace Destabilizing Rounds, which will also be an excellent fit for the build. Destabilizing Rounds is now an S tier perk because for simply getting a kill with the weapon, you are now granted 5 seconds of volatile rounds. The reason we want this is because, again, there are several void-focused artifact perks that benefit the build as a whole. The first being Volatile Marksman. The boost from Volatile Marksman is going to make it so volatile detonations grant class ability energy. In fact, per detonation, you will receive roughly 10% of your class ability energy, which will occur after every single kill you get with your Destabilizing Rounds weapon. As a reminder, in order to boost your artifact perks, all you need to do is start any kind of ritual in your Tome of Want. As for your heavy weapon, of course, it depends on the content you're playing, but if you're taking this build into a Lost Sector, I'm going to continue recommending the Watchful Eye Seasonal Machine Gun, since it feels great and has the ability to stun 2 types of champion in the same weapon. One from Overload machine guns, and the other from the fragile mod Power of Resolve that lets it stun unstoppable champions. Plus, the role of Overflow Rolling Storm feels really nice to use, so go get one if you haven't already. For the rest of your artifact perks, we're starting with Dielectric in column 3. Dielectric is going to make it so defeating arc debuff targets grants Bolt Charge, and in fact, all you need for this is a single enemy that's either jolted or blinded, and defeating it will award you a single stack of Bolt Charge. And with this build, our main source of arc debuffing is going to be the Jolt from the Electrified Snare Prismatic Grenade that applies both Suspend and Jolt at the same time. Dielectric also has a boost that makes it so rapidly defeating arc debuff targets spawns an Orb of Power and heals a small portion of your health, which is just a nice added bonus. Moving into column 4, we next want Maligned Harvest. This perk is going to make it so rapidly applying Volatile causes your next source of void weapon damage to create a weakening burst, which is going to be helpful for dealing more damage to your enemies and making sure things die faster. Lastly, in column 4, we're taking Flashover. This perk makes you amplified when reaching maximum stacks of Bolt Charge, which is just another handy way of reactivating or refreshing your amplified timer, and also your Bolt Charge detonations now deal 2.5 times more damage than at base, which in my mind makes this a must-have mod this season. Moving into column 5, the first perk you'll want is Diffuse defibrillating blast. This is going to make it so stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of bolt charge, but also your bolt charge detonations now apply jolt, which feeds straight back into dielectric and heals a small portion of your health as well. Finally, the last perk you'll be needing is void flux, which makes it so defeating weakened targets with a void weapon applies volatile to nearby targets. Yet another source of volatile that feeds into volatile marksman so that our barricade comes back faster. Now I want to briefly mention what your stat distribution should look like, and if you can manage to get it like mine, where I have triple 100 in resilience, discipline, and strength, then please do. But if your armor can't manage that, then try to get 100 in resilience first, then pour the rest into discipline and strength however you see fit. Having 100 resilience is mandatory for reducing your barricade cooldown as much as possible, but the other stats don't really matter too much. The good thing about using an exotic class item is that your stats can be carried by your other 4 legendary pieces, so if you can go for the double or triple 100, then do. Alright, let's wrap things up by talking about our mod selection. Starting with the helmet, we're taking a single copy of Dynamo so that we can get a small chunk of super energy when using our barricade near targets, then Strand and Void Siphon. For the gauntlets, you'll be needing 2 copies of Bolstering Detonation so that whenever you deal damage with your grenade, you're regaining roughly 17% of your barricade back, and then 1 copy of Focusing Strike so that the same can happen but this time with your melee instead. For the chest piece, we're taking 1 copy of Charged Up so that we can store a maximum of 4 armor charges, then general resist mods like usual. For the boots, we have 1 copy of Stacks on Stacks so that every time we collect an Orb of Power, we gain 2 armor charges instead of 1, Absolution to provide a small bump in energy to all of our abilities when collecting an orb, then Insulation to provide barricade energy also when collecting an orb. Finally, for the class item, we're taking 1 copy of Utility Kickstart so that each time we use our barricade and have armor charge stored, we consume it and instantly gain a portion of it back, Reaper so that after casting barricade, our next weapon kill spawns an orb, and Powerful Attraction to make it so casting our barricade collects any nearby orbs. As far as the gameplay loop is concerned, your primary goal is to charge your Transcendence as fast as possible, and to do this, simply pop your barricade first, then spam the rest of your abilities, get kills with your void weapon to regenerate your barricade, deal some strand weapon damage here and there to spread unravel, then repeat the entire process. Once you have your Transcendence, much of it remains the same. Just remember to use your grenade and melee whenever available to get those gauntlet mods working and continue slaying out with your void weapon. I must say this has been a very satisfying build to make, so I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making it. Here is the fashion I use for the build, and as always there will be a dim link in the description. And do remember to join my Discord server so that you can browse the rest of my build catalog in a clean and concise format. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.